monsters, madness, and magic.
All right, folks, welcome to the Monsters, Madness, and Magic podcast. I'm your host, Justin, here with a quick word before we dive in. Now, in this episode, I chat with owner of Greylord's Hoard, graphic designer and metalhead Michael Greylord about underappreciated sword and sorcery titles, science fiction, his relationship with Eternal Champion, formative horror films, and more. As always, thank you all for listening out there. And without further ado, here you go. Mike, take us back in time. You're a youngster. You're a book reader, fort builder, troublemaker, all the above.
Well, out of those three, it's definitely going to be on the book reader side of things. I wasn't much of a troublemaker,
That's
and I was
good.
pretty much a homebody. So it was just books for the most part until I really got into music, and then it was more listening to as much music as possible, playing
Hmm.
guitar, and then I would read a lot about a lot of music, but it kind of waned a little bit as far as a lot of the fiction goes, and then towards the end of high school is whenever I started getting really into the like the sword and sorcery stuff. All the
Hmm.
stuff that I'm kind of like in the realm of now. It definitely started a little bit later in life.
Okay. So early on, what were you leaning towards? Goosebumps?
I didn't, I had a bunch of friends that were into Goosebumps, but it wasn't really something that grabbed me. As far as books go, kind of just the standard stuff that I'd find at school. I remember I've been trying to find the name of this series for a long time, and it was around like sixth or seventh grade. I was reading this book, and it was mystery mixed with kind of what was it? It was a little supernatural and mystery, and it was this older guy and this kid that was the main character, and they would go on these adventures together. A lot of it had to do with it was kind of interesting. It was like Christian mythology stuff. It was
Uh-huh.
almost like a Hellboy for middle schoolers because it would be like they would have these artifacts. You know how Hellboy would always pull out artifacts and stuff like that, and they would just have these things. And like I remember distinctly, they had like splinters of the cross and something. It was just really weird. I found it, and I can't for the life of me remember what it was, but I remember being pretty attracted to that. And then just due to my age, I'm not uh, too proud to admit I did read a lot of Harry Potter when I was a kid.
Nothing wrong with that,
Uh,
man.
yeah,
We're all kids at one point.
so there's a lot of that, and it's obviously not my personality anymore. I'm like, well, there's a lot of people my age that have created an entire personality around it, which that's for them.
Yeah, yeah. Damn, now you got me wondering about that series. I'm trying to just run through my head and nothing's
Dude,
ringing.
I've never come across anything about it uh later on, and I remember there being like maybe two or three books at my middle school library that I found, and I was just like, what? Like, it was just really intriguing. It was real dark, very like supernatural, kind of creepy, and I was like, I'm thinking about it. It's something that I would like to read again. At least it might be bad. No, don't tell us reading it now. But like, it was just this really interesting series, and there was that. I read a lot of or I read the Lloyd Alexander series. uh, it's really funny hearing Howie talk about that because
The
that's where he
Black
got
Cauldron.
the
Yeah.
Cauldron Born from, and he was like, "They're terrible books," and I'm like, as a kid, I was thinking like, "These are the coolest books in the world. What are you talking
Yeah.
about?" And
That is
like,
a cool
I
name.
remember, yeah, oh, it's awesome. Yeah, all the stuff, the hiking and all that kind of stuff. I remember it was funny because whenever I first read it, I remember writing down "Born of the Cauldron" on like a piece of paper, going, "I'm gonna make music out of this," and I had like a 30-second clip of like music recorded, and then years later I find out Cauldron Born, Howie Bentley's,
He beat you to it.
30 times the musician that I'll ever attempt to be. So it was a funny coincidence. Whenever I found that band, I was like, no way. And then hearing them actually talk about it was just, that was funny.
Promise I'm not going to harp on it, but you piqued my interest now. That series that we can't find. Do you
Yeah,
remember if it was was it like something that came out then, or do you remember it being a bit older, like Hardy
I
Boy
think it
style?
was a bit older. It was, yeah, it felt, as far as what I can remember, like having the book in hand, it definitely remembered it like kind of an older feeling, like the texture. I
Yeah.
don't know, it's a goofy thing to say, but like just the texture of it, the vibe, everything about it, it was definitely older. So if anyone out there in podcast land hears this and they know what I'm talking about, please leave a comment or something, because this is something it's been bugging me for the past 20 years at this point, because I always think about it every now and again. I'm like, what was that series? So I don't know.
Dude, I'm gonna hunt this thing down for you.
I mean, if you can find it, pretty please. I don't know. I don't even know if I'd be able to recognize it from a title or an author either. Like I would have to get like a synopsis and be like, probably find the book and read at least a couple paragraphs, and I could be like, oh, that's it, that's the one. But
Maybe
I
you
don't know.
dreamed it.
Can't remember. Yeah, maybe I did, because I was the only. It was. I don't even know how I found it. I think I was looking at like Lewis Carroll books or something to try to find it was Alice in Wonderland, and it was somewhere around it, and something caught my eye, and yeah, it's just one of those. It's weird. I don't know what it is.
That's something similar that happened to me. You ever seen the horror anthology? I think it's damn. Now I'm forgetting it again. I think it's called Chill. I think it's called Chiller.
Is it an anthology?
Yeah,
Was it a book series
I don't
or
think
a
so.
no?
Uh,
Okay.
the only thing I could remember for years was just this one scene where this chick was in a college auditorium, and she had red hair and she changes into a monster. And that's the only thing I could
Sounds cool.
ever. Yeah, that's the only thing I could remember from the movie. Never found it my whole fucking life. Describe that one scene. You know, Nick, he used to be on the podcast a lot.
Oh, okay. Yeah, one of
Yeah,
the co-hosts.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I described that one scene to him after looking for this movie my whole life. He's like, dude, that's chiller. So yeah.
Jeez.
So Nick might be able to find this shit.
That'd be wild. That would, like I said, it's I don't know. It's just a weird niche little. It's
So born and raised in Texas your whole life?
technically I was born in Germany.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why I said technically.
You were.
It's just how it was. Yeah. But I didn't stay there for very long. And Dad was Army, so we came back to Texas. Both of my parents are from Texas, and so everything else has been Texas since then. So not necessarily born in Texas, but got back pretty quick, and was definitely raised.
So how old were you? Like you were born in Germany, then all you can
I was like
remember is
I was a year and a half or something like that. Maybe
okay.
not even. I can't remember the exact time frame. It wasn't long enough for anything. I've
Gotcha.
got pictures of me in Venice, pictures of me in Paris, and I'm like, I don't
A
remember
Renaissance man.
it. Yeah. Renaissance baby. You put it like that, yeah.
So formative films and TV shows. Obviously, we have a lot in common, but what pops
Oh,
into
yeah.
your head?
Early on, TV shows. I watched a lot of like TV when I was a kid. I was right around like the Toonami time period.
Mm-hmm.
So like I watched Samurai Jack religiously as a kid, and that it's funny because I started rewatching that a few years ago. Obviously, like I always remember being a fan of it. I rewatched it a few years ago, and I was like, oh, this has everything. Because if you watch the first episode of Samurai Jack, it's almost a retelling of Conan the Barbarian. Like there's so much
Mm,
of the Milius Conan in that first episode. I was like, hold on a second, like this is I was ahead of my own time apparently, because I just
mhm.
I didn't know all the references, but there was that. Samurai Jack was a big one. I watched like Gundam and Dragon Ball Z. Never really kept up with that past childhood. My dad, I was raised with Godzilla flicks
Mm.
playing, so it was big monsters all the time. Another two big movies were kung fu theater movies, Kid with the Golden Arm and Five Deadly Venoms. I remember distinctly watching those early on, and me and my little group of friends were just like enthralled with it. The Five Deadly. I don't know. You're probably a Shaw
Yeah,
Brothers fan, right?
yeah.
So those two, especially the Five Deadly Venoms, the way they had all the different masks and the different styles, I just loved it. I ate it up, and it's just that's definitely been something that's kind of stuck. As far as kid stuff goes, another one that was pretty big because it was early. I can't remember the order of which I watched them, but I remember watching The Thing whenever I was pretty young, and that one I was, it's a terrifying movie. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it
Like
is.
just the creepy eeriness factor, and that's one that I still watch regularly, like at least twice a year, probably. I could probably watch it more often, but I just, I want to keep it a little bit special.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Same thing, man. Like I remember, obviously I grew up on horror movies, but
right.
adjacent to that is every dubbed Jackie Chan movie that exists.
Oh yeah, yeah. I wore the Jackie Chan's First Strike VHS out at the house. Like we had that one. I watched that a bunch of times.
So what about going to the movie theater? Was that a big deal for you or not a big movie
Oh,
go?
yeah, yeah. Early childhood would definitely be movie theater because just with my age, it was whenever like Spider-Man was coming in the theater, Star Wars Episode 1 was hitting, Lord of the Rings was coming out, and so one of the things that my parents, mostly my dad, my mom was a teacher, so she couldn't take work off, but my dad would take time off work, and he would take me out of school, and we would go to the first showing.
Mm.
So, I saw Spider-Man, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, first showing on that Friday at what it was like, 10 o'clock in the morning. My dad, he had it. I guess I've been thinking about it. I'm trying to say this into words. Like it was like those characters and stories were such an integral part into his childhood that I could tell that's what he was trying to do with me. Like he expressly remembers going to see the first Star Wars whenever he was a kid. And so episode 1 comes out, we got to go see that in the theater. It's just a big deal. So that was a definitely formative time going to theater, especially like I said, like it was always the first thing. We got to get there 2 hours early to get the good seats because you couldn't reserve them back then.
I'm that kind
All
of
that kind of
guy
stuff.
to this day.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Even with reserved seats, I'm like, I want to be there a little early. Something about it makes me a little anxious.
Yeah, the first time, well, my wife, when she was my girlfriend and we were going to shows, she was just, it blew her mind how early I was getting to shows and like just waiting in line for 4 hours. She's like, why are we here? This doesn't start for another 4.5 hours. I'm just like, trust me,
Trust me.
we got this.
Yeah, for sure.
So, parents, were they also big into music as well? Any musicians?
Oh yeah, they were both big music fans. My mom, she was in like percussion in high school. She knew a little bit of piano. So growing up, it was definitely a musical household. Not necessarily instruments around all the time, but we listen to music. Like I've got little home videos of me as a kid, like headbanging to Metallica, like distinctly, like For Whom the Bell Tolls in a video, and then there's like another video, and it's either War Pigs or Paranoid playing in the background. So it's like it was always there. My dad says he put headphones on my mom's stomach whenever I was, brewing. So it definitely always been there, especially the heavier stuff. I kind of lucked out in that regard. I got a lot of friends who discovered heavy metal later on, and it was the natural thing for me. And so like listening to that, and so there's a period where it's like early on, and then it kind of, I wouldn't say my interest waned, but it just wasn't something that I thought about as much for a while. But then I got it. I got a guitar, and I think it was the summer between sixth and seventh grade. I
Hmm.
got a guitar, and that kind of rejuvenated or kind of kickstarted my own personal like music journey. So I would find all kind of stuff, and it'd be funny because I would do research and be like, "Have you heard this?" And then my mom would be like, "Yeah, this is in high school." I was like, "Why haven't you told me about it? Like, what's going on here?" Like, so it was a lot of the stuff that I was bringing to the household. It was like either older stuff or newer stuff. My parents were pretty open about creating a conversation, with it.
Hmm.
So it was always really cool. And then, you know, I forgot where I was going with that thought, but yeah, basically it was around. And whenever I got my own, it was just whenever I got super hyper focused on it. And then I've
Guitar.
built it 10 times since then as far as depth and level of nerddom that I find my music taste is.
You still play guitar?
Oh yeah, I play fairly. Well, I shouldn't say fairly often. Whenever I can, I definitely try to write things. I have a couple recorded projects on like Bandcamp, and I do have a new project coming out. I think I was telling you about it earlier. It's not announced just yet. I had some like in my Instagram stuff, and a handful of people know. But that one should be coming out hopefully summertime. We're trying to wrap it up. It'll just be like a quick. I want to put it on 7 inch. We'll see what the final runtime is. Just like a short EP. All the stuff is stuff I wrote on guitar, but then I recorded bass for it. A lot of good friends to contribute to it, and hopefully we can write some more. I think everyone's, especially after the recording session, was like I think 2 weeks ago now. I went up to Arthur Rizik's house, and we recorded all the basic tracks, and everyone seems pretty rejuvenated with some songwriting, at least for this. So we'll see what happens. I don't want to
Right. I don't want to
I don't
ask
want
too
to
many
put it out
questions
there
either.
too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. I got you. Because I got questions, but we're not going to ask them yet.
Maybe we can come back later whenever that's
Yeah,
ready to
for
go.
sure. For sure. So you mentioned earlier, the sword and sorcery stuff didn't come till
Yeah.
later. Was it music that led you there, or was it something else?
It's funny. It was Conan the Barbarian. It was
Mm.
finally whenever I saw Conan the Barbarian. There's a lot of the music that I was listening to had the themes of it. Like one of my favorite bands in high school was the Sword. It was around that time. Like you read the lyrics and it's like they got the song called "The Frost Giant's Daughter," and you're like, "Oh, that's kind of interesting. You know what's going on with this?" And then they got another song called "Beyond the Black River," and you're like, "Oh, that's kind of an interesting song title." And then I finally watched Conan the Barbarian, and I was like, "Oh, what is this? This is awesome. Let me go down the rabbit hole of Conan and Robert E. Howard." And the first stuff that I actually read, because I kind of did a bunch of research on Howard beforehand, and I was like, I want to read Solomon Kane first because he actually wrote that earlier than
Hmm.
all the Conan stuff. And so Solomon Kane was the first Howard that I read, and that's what really started the fascination with Sword and Sorcery, and just from there, from where I am now.
Solomon Kane's still my favorite Howard protagonist to this day.
Oh yeah, I think I like saying that just because Solomon Kane rules. Those stories are like I love the vengeance. Just his
He's got some epic
ability.
one-liners. Like he's just
Oh, totally. Yeah, yeah. It's just
very
it's
solemn.
totally and there's a lot of dark like horror vibes throughout it, but his conviction to vengeance in a lot of the tales are just I was like, this rules, man. He's hunting down this dude. He's traveling across continents. That's like the coolest thing I've ever read. And he didn't even know this girl. Like is so that kind of stuff. And obviously it's probably because it was the first stuff that I read, and that's so that had a lot of people that whatever has the most impact on you. But I still really like Solomon Kane, even
Hmm.
though I read all the Cole stuff, read all the Conan stuff, Bram Lockmore, and like all those other characters ruled. But something about Solomon Kane really stuck with me.
And I'll just speak for myself. The more I read I say as a kid early on in life, that's the more it made me want to write. Was it the same with you? Did you ever want to try to write yourself or try anything out?
I've tried every now and again. I'll like get a little. Oh, you know what I could do? Like I could probably write something. So I had like a little idea, and I've got started drafts going back to high school of just little stories, little ideas. Most of it kind of we haven't talked about science fiction. I watched a lot of science fiction when I was a kid too. So like Star Trek was a big deal.
Mm.
Watched like Stargate, Farscape, and stuff. So a lot of the stuff that I've always tried to write kind of has more of a science fiction-y kind of vibe. Oh, another series. Sorry, I'm just backtracking all your questions, but
It's all good.
the John Carter series, Edgar Rice Burroughs stuff, because like that has the spirit of Sword and Sorcery, but it's like I guess it would be kind of Sword and Planet,
Yeah.
maybe depending on how you want to distinct everything. But the John Carter series was a big deal, especially his stuff and a lot of the other early guys. They were it was all imagination because they were writing. He was talking about Mars being covered in a thin layer of yellow green moss. No, obviously that's you can't write that nowadays. If you tried to say, oh yeah, my story's got moss covered, Mars, people would
You're an
reject it
idiot.
immediately. Yeah, but all the super early stuff, that speculative side, it's what really that kind of influenced me more or like grasped me more than a lot of the scientifically accurate stuff. Like I love the idea of creating the entire world yourself regardless of what the facts are. So I really appreciated that. So anytime I've tried to write, it's been kind of along the lines of maybe some science fiction, maybe little tidbits here and there. I do write lyrics for the few bands that I have or have had, kind of sort of.
Will
I'll
have.
write the lyrics for those. Yeah, like a band that I did a few years ago was called Ice Files, and I'm gonna finish it someday, but I started like a sci-fi saga with that project, and I even tried doing like a short story with it. I still have the draft somewhere. I want to finish the saga of like the songs, or well, I definitely want to do the songs, sorry, and then either do kind of a short story, or if I can get someone to illustrate a comic book, because I think it's a really cool idea. And
Hmm.
it's like this guy, it's a far flung future kind of deal. This was shortly after I read a bunch of Gene Wolfe stuff, so his type of futuristic world building was a big influence. But it basically comes down to this guy figures out there's this water on the moon, and so he has to craft a rocket ship, and he goes to the moon, and he finds the wizard on the moon, who's the keeper of the moon water, and then he drinks the water, and he turns into this gaseous form, and he's locked on the moon, and he doesn't know what to do. And so like that's like the first portion, and the second portion would be like his gaseous form just flowing across the moon because I love all the NASA stuff, space, big fan of all that, all the Apollo missions. And then finally, he kind of launches himself off the moon. He goes into deep space. I haven't figured out like the exact details, but basically what happens, it's very 2001. He kind of finds maybe like the pillars of creation, and then kind of intermixes with all of the universe creation and like the star creating materials, and eventually like compresses into his own star. And that's like the epic finale is he becomes a star. And so it's very 2001, kind of that abstract science fiction
Yeah,
stuff. So
yeah.
I really want to get this going. And obviously I ruined the ending for everybody out there listening. So,
Obviously, you've got the
uh,
outline.
yeah, I've got the outline. I've got outlines for so many things. I'm not, ideas are my favorite thing to do. Like I'll just sit and I'll think about it. What about this? And so it's a matter of getting it all together. I have another idea I was talking about with a friend the other day. I want to do like a noir mystery. I would like to do it as screenplay just because I love like film noir. It's been a one of my favorite things, especially over the past few years. Really digging into some of like the deeper cuts there. But I want to do like a Lovecraft noir. I think it'd be really cool just to tie
Yeah,
in because it's the time period in which he was writing it,
it fits
and
perfectly.
so yeah, you might as well like make the private detective lose his mind. That's
Yeah.
all you got to do. A little hard boiled detective work, and someone goes crazy in the end. That's all. Throwing some tentacles and some magic, and you're good.
See, I'm with you. I'm with you. I do like reading science fiction, but when it comes to writing, it's the science part that scares me because I'm a big dummy.
Oh, totally.
I'm like,
Yeah,
I don't want to have to worry about facts here, man. I just want to throw some
right.
magic in there, and that's how shit gets done.
That's why like I've been really been thinking about this like the idea of science fantasy a lot.
Hmm.
Because like with Moorcock stuff, whenever he was publishing in all the science fantasy, if you read all those early Elric stuff, there's a lot of science fiction in those stories.
Yeah, there is.
And so, but he's spinning it with magic and uh, everything like that. So it still definitely has the fantasy.
Just the talking about science fiction versus fantasy and such. I used to play a
Yeah,
lot of I was a big gamer when I was younger, not so much
yeah,
anymore. I always describe it as I've always been more of an Elder Scrolls guy than a Fallout guy.
yeah. There you go. Yeah. Well, it's funny because like I haven't really played a lot of games growing up. I play a lot of Mortal Kombat like type stuff, so it's just like that fighting stuff. But whenever I have tried playing games, it's always been more fantasy side. Anyways, like it's funny because all of my particular interests, I mean they're pretty widespread, but like I always have this like yearning for some science fiction. But whenever I play games, I've never wanted it.
Yeah,
like
right.
at some point, I just want to hack stuff with a sword. I don't want to have to like
Exactly.
pilot through a star field necessarily.
Don't get the
So
gun away from me. I want the sword.
yeah, so that's like that kind of like with the John Carter stuff. It was like you're saying, you're worried about being scientifically accurate, and that's one of the things that I love about early like that early science fiction. Like even like H.G. Wells, he just made stuff up. He
Yeah.
doesn't care. Like there was no one to prove him wrong. They had the world, just to make up. I love that. That's
If
the
you
best part.
if you read the Time Machine now, you're like, man, that sounds like it could work.
Well, yeah, totally. But like just stuff like that. It's like I just have like a deeper appreciation for a lot of the older stuff. Like I can't. I think the newest science fiction I've read is still from like the 90s. It's not even like
Yeah.
there's no way I'm reading like a modern science fiction now. I don't want to. They're going to talk about too much of that stuff. I don't care.
So Mike, sticking with your childhood, what scared you as a kid, movie wise or
Uh,
real world wise?
I think I guess as a kid it was kind of like I was scared of the dark because it was like the unknown.
Yeah.
It's like the what actually is lurking in the corner that you can't see, and that still kind of freaks me out a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. I get over myself a lot better than I did whenever I was 7, but it was just kind of that like that kind of that ominous anxiety that you can get just with this idea of something being completely unknown. That kind of screwed me up. One of the one of the early movies that I remember really getting freaked out about, besides like The Thing, I'm trying to remember time frames and I'm getting them mixed up. But like The Thing, obviously big scary movie. Predator really scared me whenever he takes his mask off at the end. I remember that being a really early memory of me going, "Oh no, what is going on here?" And then it actually kind of relates to Predator now that I'm thinking about it. But Blade 2, I saw Blade 2 before I saw the first Blade. And whenever like the mutated
Yeah,
vampire
he
like
does the
opens his jaw, I was out. Like I left the room. my dad and one of my friends were watching it together, and I was like, nope, I'm out. I'm going to my room. I'm done with this. So I just went and like sat in bed. I was like, you guys watch whatever you want. I think I eventually they kind of like, no, come on, come back, you can watch it. I think I finished it that one go, but I that's one of those couldn't handle. I think it has to do with like the almost human. Like
It-
if it's too different, then yeah, it's nothing. But it's that kind of like that eerie, not necessarily uncanny valley, kind of like that maybe a little bit. That uncanny valley, like you're a little too close to human, and why is it so different? That kind of stuff kind of freaks me out.
yeah, that's I've said it before. That's exactly why I was scared of the werewolf and zombies,
Oh,
is
totally.
because they're just there's a thin line between that monster and being a human. The werewolves are literally human, and they just turn into a
Yeah,
monster when there's full moon.
yeah, that's terrifying. I wouldn't want to do that.
Now, if I were a werewolf, I think it'd be pretty cool.
Uh,
I'd probably choose that.
I think it depends on maybe it depends on the which mythology you're pulling from, or
Yeah,
what type of werewolf.
I want to be
I
able to
don't like the
control it.
idea of being yeah. Well, if you can control it, yeah, that's a whole different thing. Anything that's like totally out of your control. I mean, like, at least with werewolves, you have like a timeline. You kind of know the general time. So I don't know. Still frightening.
So with being scared of the dark, do you think that was it like outside influence, like the movies you were watching, or was that like an imagination thing?
I think it was an imagination thing. I've always had pretty wild imagination, as far as just being able to create worlds and circumstances in my head and kind of doing this stuff. So it was like it's kind of like what Lovecraft would rely on because he would always rely on the reader to make up the great unknown,
Yeah,
right? And that's the genius of his writing. And so, unbeknownst to me, that's exactly what was happening to me when I was a kid because I would just be like, but what if it's this? Like, I know it's not. I know it's just my closet. This was my clothes in there. But what if it's more? What
hmm
if there's a giant monster who can materialize? Like that. It was definitely imagination driven, not necessarily movies because I didn't watch a lot of like horror movies whenever I was like young. It wasn't something that was like a rooted fear necessarily. I kind of waited a little bit before or my parents made me wait a little bit before I got into them. But yeah, I think it was definitely driven by self imagination.
yeah, yeah. So I know you collect a lot of stuff, man. You got a lot of records and tapes and
Yes.
stuff. When did that start?
Well, I've always that's another thing we talk to my parents more. So I kind of grew up in a collecting household. We had all the movies that we watched. We had them on DVD. We had the VHS. Whenever the Blu-ray came out, we got the Blu-rays. So it was just one of those. It wasn't. It just made sense to me, if that makes sense
Yeah,
to you. It
yeah,
was
it
just one
does.
of those. Everything's around. My dad collected comics. My dad collected movies. So as soon as I left the house and like went off on my own, I was like, oh, I don't have any of the movies that I'd like to watch, so I need to start building my own collection. And even a little bit earlier on, I would once I got into like Conan, it was like collecting Conan comics. I was a big Green Lantern fan early on as well, so that was another thing. And my dad and my mom always kind of they never tried to stop the collecting. They always kind of encouraged it, just having it. It was always important, having the physical media. I've never known any other
Yeah,
life necessarily. So whenever it came to my own stuff, it's just, all right, here's the collection going. And then, I tell, people about it at work. They're like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh yeah, I got that on VHS. And they're like, what? Okay, I got the VHS and I got the DVD if you need to borrow it, like something like that. And they're like, why do you still have that stuff? I'm like, I don't know. It's just, I like stuff. I like
yeah.
sitting around my house and I like looking at shelves packed to the brim. So, I've got probably too much, but, records, tapes, books, movies, it's just everything. It's just, makes sense. It makes sense to me. That's all. That's what it really comes down to.
I used to collect VHS. I had a huge collection, had to catalog it and everything, and it all got
Yeah.
lost in a house fire.
Oh
Yeah,
gosh.
yeah. I
Yeah, that's
just I haven't had
yeah.
the heart to start again. It was just one of those things.
I've always thought about. I've kind of like because I have other friends that have mentioned similar stuff. My buddy Jerry Hyonis is Wormwalk on Instagram. He does all the art. We've talked
Okay.
about collections before, and he collects a lot of action figures, but he doesn't collect like a lot of music or movies anymore because he lost all of his stuff in like a flood. Storage, his storage, what's it called store like
Storage container.
yeah container got flooded, and so he lost it. And he was like, I'm not rebuilding that. What's the point? And so like I thought about that. I'm like, well, what would happen if I just lost everything? Because like I have I've got some pieces in my collection for stuff that I know I'm not going to get second stuff. A lot of it can be replaced because I don't I don't necessarily go for like the super high end things, but there's a few things in like my music collection, personalized items, stuff like that, where I'm like,
Yeah.
I got Seed of Destruction Hellboy signed by Mike Mignola. It's personalized to me. I met him. If that just disappears, when's the next time you're gonna meet that? I'm not trying to show off, but I got Conan the Barbarian #1 signed by Roy Thomas, and it's personalized to me. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of collection stuff. I'm like, if I lose this, would I try to redo it? I don't really know. I hopefully never have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Deal
Yeah.
with the collection, but I've always kind of thought about if I do lose everything, would I actually restart? And I don't really have a good answer for that question.
Hopefully you never have to answer it, man.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah.
So speaking of showing off, let's show off. What is your most rare piece that you have, movie wise and music wise?
Movie wise, I don't think. I mean, as far as maybe a few out of print DVDs or something, like I collect a lot of like the Criterion collection, and there's like a couple out of print things they don't have anymore. I don't really I don't go for the overly higher price things. I have like a couple limited editions that I just happen to buy in time. So I don't really know what I'd say as far as movies go. Music wise, a lot of it has to do with like being friends with really cool people or working on really cool releases. Like I have some really limited edition Eternal Champion stuff because I worked on Ravening Iron with them, doing all the layout work. So I was included in like I've got one of the Sword Worship test press for that. I've got the big wooden box set that Nora Most put out, but then I also have the even more limited, like small CD wood box that like nobody has other than label people in the band. So like that kind of stuff. And then like I got a test press from my buddy Kyle and from Out of Season
Mm-hmm.
for like a Thangorodrum LP. So stuff like that. Like those are probably what would be the more sought after pieces from other people, if they were trying to get
Yeah.
in on. So probably just that. I can't think of anything like I don't like spending a lot. Like, here's another weird thing. I have a big collection, but I don't like spending a lot of money on one item.
Yeah.
So like if there's a vintage record or something that's going for $1,200, like I'd rather spend $1,200 on 60 records if I can.
Yeah, dude.
I'd
Yeah.
rather have like a mass.
100%.
There's not really like I'm looking at stuff trying to think, but a lot of it is just like the personalized stuff that I've accumulated over the years. That's probably the rare collectible things. And as far as did you ask about books? I have some books. I got like all the Kane stories, all the Kane paperbacks.
Those are hard to find, dude. They're getting
Yeah,
harder and
those are
harder to find.
insanely hard to find. And so I've been lucky enough where I've caught a bunch of them in the wild, actually. Just like there was one day I walked into a half price and there was like 3 or 4 Kane novels there, and I was like, somebody just died. Like
Dude, it had to.
as bad as it is, like that's what
Rest
it
in
is when you
peace.
go to no joke. And then you walk through the rest of the science the sci-fi fantasy section and you're like, oh yeah, this is all from like one person.
Yeah.
So like I've got a bunch of the Kane novels. I was re-listening to the Sword and Sorcery roundtable that you did because I listen to that every now and again. And Howie was talking about those Death Dealer novels. I've got all those that I picked up. Like I picked up the first one at a library giveaway one time. It was just I didn't know at the time. Like it was, oh yeah, Death Dealer, that's Frank Frazetta. I didn't know those were anything cool. And then I've got a couple other editions and stuff like that. But a lot of it's just like the kind of hard to find. Not overly hard to find, but like just enough. And like I said, I'm not going on eBay spending $500 on a book set. It's just
Yeah, right, right.
I'll wait for the right time, the right place.
If you go try to find some Carl Edward Wagner on eBay, you're not spending less than $30 on probably a shitty condition
Oh yeah,
cane.
I've seen some that are like rank, like just mangled covers, and they're like, oh yeah, they're going for this much. I'm like, not your edition, damn it. And it's funny with a lot of the Sword and Sorcery stuff. It seems within the past like 5, 6 years, maybe everything's been going a little more up in price. Like
Yeah.
even half price books, like they'll have it set aside, and they're like stuff. And I'm like, yo, 4 years ago, I picked up Stormbringer for $4. Now you're selling it for 25. Like, what's going on here? Like, I don't know. I don't know if the cultural zeitgeist is catching up with all the sword sorcery stuff or what. But
I
I'm
think
like,
it is.
it doesn't make. I mean, I don't want to say it doesn't make sense, but it's just really weird to see.
Yeah. Just another one that comes to mind. The only reason I have Niftaline by Michael Shea on the shelf over there is
Yeah.
because Howie let me borrow it. I will give it back, Howie. I'm still reading it. Sorry. If you're listening to this, I
Give
will
it
give it.
back.
I
Yeah,
promise. Because Jason recommended that in the round table and I never read it. And I was like, all right,
yeah.
I'll go search for a copy. $90
He's been telling me
for
about
the
that one for
cheapest.
years.
Yeah,
How
90
much you
bucks was the
think?
cheap. 90
Oh
bucks is the cheapest one I
yeah.
could find online.
Yeah,
And
that's insane. He's one of those authors I'm always like, if I'm at a store, he's one of the authors that I check, you know, just to make sure. On the off chance, do they not know what they have here? But I've never found Niftaline in the wild. That's
no,
crazy.
no, and Pete, Bloodstone Pete, he posted his a Niftaline that he bought, and I messaged him. I was like, dude, I've been looking for a copy of this. I can't find one for cheaper than 90 bucks. And he was like, well, I paid a bit more than 90 bucks for this.
Oh damn, jeez whiz. I gotta talk to him about that. That's funny. I love Pete. He's a good guy, man.
Yeah, Pete is awesome. You mentioned Eternal Champion earlier. Obviously, you've been involved with the band for a while. What's the genesis of the relationship? Were you guys friends beforehand?
No, not really. It's funny because being from Texas, everyone kind of assumes that I just knew Jason, and
That's what I
had known
thought.
Jason. Well, yeah, like plenty of people. You're not the only one. I hate. No, I shouldn't say it. Like I don't necessarily like that people think that I'm a lot more into the stuff than I was. Like in high school, whenever like Iron Age was towards the end of their career, and then like even when Gravenright was popping up, like I didn't pay attention to a lot of local music. It's I've talked to a few people about this, but like the local music, I felt above that. I know it's a stupid thing to say. Like I've since then changed my ways. I promise.
I
Uh,
understand though. Yeah,
but like I was listening to Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, going like, "This is the best music ever." Like, why would I waste my time with anything? And I think a lot of it had to do with like a lot of the local bands were like that metalcore kind of stuff.
oh yeah.
But I grew up like a little bit north of Austin, and I had friends going to like Chaos and Chaos Fest, and I was just like, man, whatever. And then looking at it now, I'm like, Bolt Thrower was on Chaos and Chaos. Manila Road was on Chaos and Chaos. The first Eternal Champion was, I think, was around one of those. And like Gravenright, Magic Circle played, like all this stuff. But I'm like, I put my head in my hands. I was like, you idiot, what were you doing? And so years go by, and then I started writing for a blog called Toilet of Hell.
Hmm.
I got involved with them, and I was writing, and we do a lot of reviews. And it was in, I think I either started in 2015 or 2016 with them. Armor of Fire came out, and that was right. That was a few years after I started really leaning heavy onto the like epic metal stuff, because that's a long conversation, anyways. So the Eternal Champion popped up, and I was like, "Yo, this album rules, man! Armor of Fire, this is badass. This is from Texas. This is wild. I never would have thought." And then they did a 3-run date in 2017. It was right at, I think it was, or it might have been the end of 2016. No, it was the end of 2016. Yeah, I can't remember the exact date. I gotta look at it again. I'm sorry. It was Eternal Champion, Summerlands, and then Venomous Maximus were doing. It was Houston, Dallas, and I think either Austin or San Antonio. It was just a quick 3-run, and I was like, "Yo, we got to go to this." I got my wife. She's cool. My wife's cool. She's like into a lot of the epic metal stuff as well, and so we went to Dallas to the show. Jason was running the merch booth, and I utilized my Toilet of Hell stuff to like talk with them. I'll be like, "Hey, this is my name is Mike. I read for this. We ranked your album here." I was able to kind of utilize that as a little bit of a credential to get like, "Oh, this guy's kind of cool. He knows his stuff." And so Jason and I just got kind of talking that night, and that's really when it started. He was like, "Hey, so you guys want to hang out afterwards?" And like my whole heart sunk because I had to work the next morning. I was like, "This is the first time I've ever been able to hang out with a band, and I can't. Like, I don't. What am I doing? This is terrible." And so I was like, "This sucks." And the next couple days, yeah, no, it felt so bad. In the next couple days, I like found him on Facebook, kind of sent him a message, and then it was shortly around that same time I started my first kind of tape label called Metalstrom Recordings, and I had just released one of my friend's death metal albums. The band was called Winds of Lang, and album's called Hoard Dominion. It's pretty good stuff.
Damn, that's a cool name.
Yeah, it's dope, and the music is insane because it's got Lovecraftian stuff. It's got Phantasm samples on it. It's a really cool album. And so I just put it out because no one was. They were sending us a bunch of labels, and I was like, "Well, can I at least do the tape? Can I do that? And they were like, "Yeah, sure." And so Winslow Lang kind of caught. I guess it kind of caught Jason's eye because like the whole Lang, he's obviously a big Lovecraft guy, and we started talking a bunch, and it was right. I'm trying to. Oh, hold on. I got to get my timelines right. They played Hell's Heroes down in Houston, the very first one, which I think was the following March, and I did a patch for them because I
Mm.
was getting into the patches and making all the designs. and I did a Cold Sword patch for them and a Summerlands patch, and then that was kind of my first little footing. And then Parallel of Death, maybe Parallel of Death was before that. Sorry, I got to get timelines. But Parallel of Death was the first tape that I worked on for them because Jason actually offered it to me. He was like, "Hey, do you want to put this out?" And I was like, "Are you kidding me right now? You want me to put this out? Yes, please, pretty please. I'll do whatever. Like this is insane." And then kind of it worked. I did all the layouts, and then Arthur wanted to keep it in house, which obviously total respects to that. It's not a slight in any way, and I still
Yeah.
got my name on the credits, and that was the very first Eternal Champion release that I worked on. I did like the shirt for it, the patch for it, and that was very rudimentary skills that I was working on with a lot of that because I have no like digital like design background. So like all the stuff that I've learned and done over the years has mainly been because of Eternal Champion and Jason going, well, what if we did this? And kind of like pushing me that little extra bit. And so it's just kind of grown from there. So definitely not before Eternal Champion, but like shortly after they really started getting a little bit bigger. It was a very perfect timing on my part to like really kick with them and then be like, oh yeah, I like all this stuff too. Howard rules, Lovecraft rules. You're writing really cool lyrics, Jason. And he was like, yeah, I guess he saw something in me that he trusted, which is really nice. And I don't know if I've ever been able to express just how much that has meant to me. That's it's one of those like actual life changing shows. Like some
Yeah.
people say like, oh, this changed my life, and like, did it? Because you just like listen to the music, and yeah, it can. But like that night when I first met Eternal Champion, it was
Literally changed your life.
like literally changed my life. And then
Yeah.
Hell's Heroes the next year after, that was the first time I like started running merch for them because they kept walking around and I was like hanging around the merch booth and people were like, can I buy something? And I was like nervously like, yeah. And so like I just started because it was like small, it was small stuff like patches and maybe a shirt, and I was like super nervous about it, like trying to keep it on lock, keep all the money in line, like don't let anyone take it, and then just being like, oh, here you guys go, I sold a bunch of stuff for you, and they were like, what? Like this is crazy. Who is this guy? Like because I didn't know the rest of the band as well at the time, but then like that's whenever it really started kicking off, and then I've traveled around the world with them, doing merch and hanging out, stuff like that. So yeah, that's the long story. It's kind of long winded,
You
but
were
that's
the
the
you were the
basic
guy they
rundown.
needed.
Yeah, apparently.
Now I'm gonna be jumping all over the place now too, but
Yeah, no, go
earlier
ahead.
we were talking about Sword and Sorcery. We mentioned
Yeah.
Howard, Solomon King, Carl Wagner, but just a fun thing for listeners out there. What would be some like I guess rare or not usually talked about stories or authors that you throw out there that you
Oh,
enjoy?
oh, damn. Oh, you put me in a spot now. I think because he like okay, so Moorcock is a big deal,
Yeah.
obviously. I think a lot of the focus is on the Elric stuff, and I think kind of getting into some of his lesser known champions is definitely worthwhile.
Yep. Agree. Hawkmoon is one of my personal favorites. The whole
Yeah.
Runestaff series. Yeah,
Ooh,
I love it.
yeah.
I don't know
Oh,
what
you were
that'd
just
be.
talking to Moorcock about that too. Yeah, I like that was a good conversation. Oh crap, you're putting me on spots. I'm totally like blanking out on names.
It just made me think of we are talking about
Yeah,
Michael
yeah, no,
Shea.
for sure.
Michael Shea is just one of those that you really don't hear too often. So that just made me
Right.
think of it.
Andrew Offutt, or
Yeah.
however you say his name.
Yeah,
He's
the
got some really
Cormac
cool
McArt
stuff. Yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
he's got the Cormac stories, and then his own stuff. Mostly the Cormac stuff is really cool. He's got a lot of really cool stuff. Someone that I got into early on, and I've kind of shared with a little bit of people, is Ben Bova. He's kind of big though. I guess he's not really kind
I've
of big.
never heard that name.
You never. He's more of a science fiction kind of thing.
Okay.
But there's this series that I read called Orion, and it has to do. It's like the epitome of good character and like an epitome of evil, and they're facing each other through a timeline. So it's like there's a bunch of time jumps throughout the book, and I realized like I read that kind of early, and I was like that kind of set a tone for a lot of things that I would find and enjoy later. So his stuff's really cool. He's one of those you go to a bookstore, you'll find an insane amount of books from. Mostly, like I said, science fiction, sword and sorcery. I can't because to me, like all the names are everyone should know them, but
Yeah. Yeah.
like obviously like the Fritz Library, everyone likes that. Moorcock. This is a terrible answer. I don't even know where to go. I'm trying to think. Honestly, Edgar Rice Burroughs because I don't feel like a lot of people talk about him very much now
Yeah.
because like the Disney movie came out, bombed, and then nobody talked about John Carter at all after that. And like there's so much imagination once you get past the main trilogy is really good. But whenever you get to like Chessmen of Mars and like all the Martian stuff, some of the creatures that he comes up with and the situations and the different aliens are just crazy cool. Like it's just so dope. And like nobody talks about Edgar Rice Burroughs.
It's that Michael Moorcock himself.
Well, yeah, yeah, yeah. All the real ones know.
Yeah, yeah. Now, have you read the Gerald of Jory stories, the C.L. Moore stories?
But which no, I haven't.
Those are good ones too.
Okay, you
Very,
said CL Moore, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Gerald of Jory, those are good ones.
Cool.
I don't want to put myself on the spot. I'm trying to look on the shelf over there, but I can't
Yeah,
see.
that's
Now
why
I
I'm
need
like I'm
glasses.
in the wrong room. I have all my books next to me. My books are in the other room. I was just gonna say because like I go to like half price books or whatever, and I'll just browse the publishers. Like I'll just look at the publishers and then like, okay, what looks cool? And because I'll collect like the ideas and a lot of the visual parts of the Sword and Sorcery for any type of layout work that I do, patches. There's a lot of really tiny references. Like I picked up this book yesterday by I don't have it sitting around. I got more comic books over here. I forgot the name of it. The name of the book is called Earth Magic. I forgot the name of the author though. Let me see. I got a picture of it because I was talking to Jason about it because it's like a real similar font to the Eternal Champion logo.
Uh-huh.
Because the Eternal Champion logo hopefully doesn't mind me saying this, but it's a reference to a book called Echoes of Valor, which is Carl Edward Wagner put together as a not a compilation, that's a CD. What do you call them?
Anthology.
Anthology. Thank you. It's like an anthology series. There's I think three of those books. Alexi and Corey Panshin did this book called Earth Magic, and like it's got a Boris Vallejo artwork on it. It's got like a gold foil logo. It's the perfect. Like I love the visuals on all this stuff, and I'll pick up random books. A lot of it has to do with the visuals. I know it sounds really bad, judging books by its
No,
cover.
no.
Like, that's half the appeal for me at least.
Shitty
For like a
covers don't
sword and
get
sorcery.
sold.
Yeah, totally. But if you put Boris Vallejo on the cover
Yeah.
and a little bit of gold foil on the logo, I'm buying it. And so I might eventually get around to reading it, but yeah, I'll see. It might just be one of those reference later kind of. I just like I said, I like collecting. It just makes sense.
Right. Especially books. I don't exactly have to read them. I just like,
Oh
well,
yeah,
it's there. And if I want to
yeah,
read it, I'll read it eventually.
absolutely. That's like I get really into like the publishers, and so there's a Pocket Fiction did a series called Timescape, and it was you've probably seen them before. You might just not like think about it, but Timescape it was like a series of books. It was like kind of like a sub label, I guess. Timescape was the name of the sub label. And so all of the layouts, there's like 5 different Timescape layouts. They all say Timescape across the top. The sickest layouts that I've ever seen on book covers, just because they're so unique and they really stick out. So like that kind of, I've been collecting a lot of Timescapes recently because you can find them for like $2 or $3, and it's
Yeah.
just a matter of like super cool art, incredible layouts. I'll send you some pictures of some of them. Like I'm definitely
Yeah. Okay.
stealing
I'm
I'm
writing them
definitely
down.
stealing some of these layout works for a cassette in the near future.
That's
So
inspiration.
yeah, absolutely. It's like you're an artist and you take pictures of the real world for references or whatever. I'll buy fantasy books instead.
Another name, because I just, talked to him recently.
Yeah.
Keith Taylor doesn't get the love I think he deserves.
Oh, cool. Yeah, yeah. When did you talk to him? I don't think I listened to that one.
It was right. It's the episode right after Moorcock.
Oh, okay. I
That's
was
a
trying to catch up on a bunch of stuff. I'll listen to that one too then.
that's a real good one. His Bard series is great, and the Andrew Offutt,
Yeah.
Cormac McArt we were talking about. He did those with Keith Taylor. Keith Taylor actually did all the
Oh,
his.
that Keith Taylor. Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
sorry. Like the names just like totally
yeah. That's
flipped
him.
on me. Okay, yeah, that. Okay. Oh, that's awesome.
He did the historical background on those because his Bard series is in the same time period as Cormac McArt.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's pretty. All right, I'll check that out too then.
give you another chance to brag here. How many Man of War tapes do you own?
Oh, man, work tapes. Oh, hold on. They're like right behind me. I can count. I have 3 copies of Fighting the World. I do have. Oh, my favorite Man of War tape I have is Into Glory Ride, signed by Ross the Boss. Got Triumph of Steel, Hail to England, and Battle Hymn. So I have all the Ross albums. Got some of the Hammer. So I got all the Ross albums and then Triumph of Steel. and because I don't think they released any tapes for Louder Than Hell. I'd have to look it up. I think they did actually. I might be, you might have caught me in a lie. I don't, but I just don't have Louder Than Hell on tape. But I do have quite a few. And
Cool,
like I
man.
said, my favorite, the Ross the Boss. I traveled up to. It was one of the very first times he announced that he was doing Hail to England in its entirety. He was playing Jersey like 20 minutes from a friend's house, and I was like, I got to go to this. We have to go. And it's like, so the two guys that I saw with was Brian and Paul, good friends, and they're like the other two big Manwar guys that I know. And so I was like, this was like one of the best shows I've ever been to. And it's funny because like it's a Hail to England show, but I got into the Glory Ride sign, so
Damn, dude.
me being goofy.
So in the same vein, what would you say are the most impactful live shows you've been to? Obviously, the Eternal Champion one.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Eternal Champion show. That's a big deal. I'm trying to think of who else would be like impactful. First time I saw Blind Guardian was kind of mind blowing because it was at one of those points where I was like, I loved Blind Guardian, had been listening to him since high school. Never, for the life of me, ever thought they would come to like the States,
Yeah.
much less because it was right after I had moved to like the Dallas Fort Worth area, and it was like we moved early in the year, and then they announced a tour and they came in November. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me, dude. Like Blind Guardian. And so luckily I've seen him like I think at least 3 or 4 times now. I think at least 3 times, maybe 4 times. The first show was just insane. But then the second time I saw him was whenever they did the Imaginations from the other side. They played it all the way through live,
Damn.
and that was incredible because we were front row, a little off to the side, but there's a 5 foot barrier, and Hansi's just right there. Like, I'm staring at his feet, but you look up and he's right there. You know what I'm saying? So like that was really, really cool because you can't see Blind Guardian in any type of small setting in Europe, whenever they play all the shows
Right.
over there, it's tens of thousands of people damn near. So Blind Guardian was definitely one that really had an impact. Whenever I went with Eternal Champion to Up the Hammers, the first time they played, not the most recent time, but the first time, and the whole set was insane because that was the first. Well, I've been to Hell's Heroes, but that was the first like broad fest I'd ever traveled for, and that was huge because that was another one where I'm like, who the hell sees Solstice, Gatekeeper, Eternal Champion, Armored Saint, and Baraka's Helm all in the same night? Like that was, it was just like just totally mind blowing. And the Greece is awesome. Anyone who wants to ever go to Up the Hammers, I definitely recommend them. That was a big deal. But then the after party, it was Eternal Champion and Wrathblade, and the
Shit.
Wrathblade set alone made the entire trip worth it. Like that was incredible. I've never seen such a heavy, hard, impactful set flow so effortlessly from these gentlemen. Like Nick, the singer, Nick Versamis, he's got such a rotund voice. It's so robust. But he walks around the stage like he's walking around his kitchen or something. Like I don't, and that, in no way does that. Am I saying that in like a derogatory or a
It's
negative way?
effortless. Yeah.
It's just so like it looks like he's just, oh yeah, this is my regular thing. Yeah, we
Yeah.
only play shows once every 5 years, and this is a huge deal for literally everybody in the room. But this is okay. It was mind blowing just to watch it, and I was like, this is insane. And like their set was perfect. So that was another big one. Damn near all the Hell's Heroes have just been fantastic. I was fortunate enough that I played the second Hell's Heroes with Gravenride. I played bass whenever Gravenride did that show. So that was another like insane moment because we started off kind of early in the day. Visigoth was playing the same day, I think, and then we finished our set. It was whenever they were just doing the upstairs and downstairs. Finished the Gravenride set, kind of cleaned up off stage, and then I walk out of the room to like the balcony of the big stage, and Omen had just started their set, and it was like that was also mind blowing because it's Omen in Texas, like playing in front of probably one of the bigger crowds in the states for like a long time, and so that was a surreal moment for me. So that was another big one. So, and since I am mentioning Hell's Heroes, I got to shout out my man Christian for organizing all that, and like he got Solitude Turns back this past year,
Shout out
which
Christian.
is
I'm gonna get to one
yeah,
one of
shout
these
out
days.
Christian. Yeah, you got to, man. It's a really good time. and the atmosphere is great, like all the people, and then obviously like the bands who were all there to see was fantastic. But yeah, Solitude is really cool. I know it's like even after seeing all these shows, sometimes you never think that there'll be like a show that can have a big impact on you again. But Solitude Eternus was definitely one of them. I watched it with my friend Brad from Eternal Champion who passed, and that was like one of
Mm.
the last big memories I had with him. And he's a huge Solitude fan, so it was like me, him, Jason, another one of our friends, and my wife. We were all kind of side stage. We kind of I worked it where I got side stage for it. We were there, and it was just mind blowing. It was incredible, like how good everything sounded, and it was just, and especially looking back, it's just a surreal moment, with especially the people around
Yeah,
whenever
yeah. So,
definitely those.
yeah, those are great ones, man. Earlier, we were talking about how Eternal Champion was sort of how you got started into the design work. At what point would you say that Greylord's Hoard was officially born and you start working with other bands, kind of branching
Well,
out a bit?
even before Eternal Champion, whenever I did that tape right before then with Metals from I did a few more around that time period. So I was doing a lot of stuff with Eternal Champion, but they weren't like now. We especially with the past. Let me hold on. There's like the pre Ravening Iron Eternal Champion stuff, and there's like post, because post Ravening Iron they've gotten so much bigger. We've done a lot more work, a lot more shirts. So like before that, I was still working with a lot of, and I still do. I still work with like a lot of people. So I would help with patches every now and again. I did like a Thangororgium tape. My buddies in Night and Gallo, I put out their demo early on. So I was working a little bit here and there just for my own, because I was feeling it out. And then as I got more comfortable, another I should mention, since we're talking Sword and Sorcery, Dave from DMR. I did a lot of the early. I did probably 20 books for him,
Did
and
not
that was
know that.
another. Yeah, I did. It was just like the cover
Yeah,
layouts.
yeah, yeah.
There's probably a stack because he's been reposting a bunch of them, and I'm like, oh yeah, I did all that. So that was a time. That was a lot of big help. I had to stop kind of doing them because I was also going to school at the same time. So my schedule got really like condensed, so I couldn't quite keep up with all of the books that he was putting out, which is it's awesome because he's kept doing it. But I did a bunch of the book covers. I'm trying to think, and so I always did something. Like I was always kind of like I want to put something out, and then Metalstrom kind of fell by the wayside for a little while, and I kind of wanted to rebrand. I was still doing a lot of Eternal Champion stuff and a bunch of other work. Like Christian has a couple bands that I've done work with. I've done a bunch of flyers for some friends. And I wanted to rebrand a few years ago as a little more of a broader spectrum, because like Metalstrom Recordings sounds very specific. It's like that sounds like you're releasing music only.
Yeah, yeah.
So I had started kind of like this Instagram page where I was just calling it Greylord's Hoard to show off my collection, because I was like, it sounds funny, it sounds good together, and it's literally just all my shit, because I just hoard things, because it's like I love the collections. So I was like, I just posting it. Like I would post up like, "There's my cool thing that I found this week" and stuff like that. And it was just kind of a goofy little thing. And then as I thought about it some more, I got this kind of was I had this itch to like start releasing stuff, and I was like, I should probably rebrand Metalstrom. And I really like this name Greylord's Hoard, because you can do whatever you want with it. Because seeing I had a few credits that was like layout by Metalstrom Recordings, and it's like that it's me, but it didn't flow right. It doesn't make sense. Like, why would this recordings do a layout? So I was like, wow, Greylord Sword sounds cool. It'll be all my favorite people that I'm releasing, all my people that I'm friends with, and I'll put this out. And so I kind of started that. The first two tapes I did was the Nightingale debut, and then I did a repress of the legendary Mist of Time, their first album as well. Because I had released a few tapes with them. No, I guess it was just I did Dungeon Crawler with Metalstrom. So I worked with Legendary pretty early on. And then, yeah, like I said, just did Greylord's Horde. And then I kind of, it was really funny. I was like, I got this itch. I'm going to release stuff. And then I did like a handful of things. And then I had to take another pause. And it was just like, crap. And so it was really last year whenever I was like, okay, I'm going to start taking a little more seriously. I want to do patches a lot more often. And then that's where the Castles and Keeps ideas started,
Mm.
because I was trying to make a unique patch release, because I'm put on my hater hat for a second here. I really don't like a lot of the patches that have been coming out the past few years. and I don't like a lot of the patched labels because it never seemed like they were being authentic with the people that they were working with. If that makes any sense. And
Yeah.
like, there might be some people out here going, "Hey, wait a second, that's me," but you know, I'll talk to you about it. I'll be straight up. And so there was just a lot of stuff coming out, and I was like, y'all aren't doing anything new. You're not doing anything fresh. You're not taking care of the bands. It literally just seems like you're chasing the paycheck for a lot of the stuff. And I'm like, this is bullshit. I'm saying, like, this is just, I didn't like it. And so I was like, I'm going to do something my own. And so the Castles and Keeps idea came up because I really wanted to work with the Obsequiae, Visigoth, Sequestered Keep, and then as I grew that kind of collection, I was like, well, Concilium has another castle. And I was like, I had this idea. I was like, they all have castles. How can I make that a thing? And so that's how the Castles and Keeps thing started. And then after the first second rebranding, whenever I like hit the ground with that, I got a lot of attention from the castles, and so I've been able to keep a pretty steady pace since then. And most of the stuff that I've released have been friends, and that's what I like doing the most. I just like helping the people that are cool people. I know
Hmm.
them. They deserve everything in the world, so I just want to help put a product out uh, for them, make sure that they're taken care of. And then, like, since then, I've kind of branched out and like reached a little bit farther. Like, I got a Kirith Ungle contact, and I did a bunch of Kirith Ungle patches. And like, obviously, I'm not friends with old Tim Baker, because oh, side tangent again. You were asking about collections and like valuables or whatever. I
Yeah.
have Bane of the Black Sword signed by Tim Baker because I brought it. I brought it to Hell's Heroes. I forgot which one that was, but Kirith Ungle played not the last year, but the year prior that they played. And I was like, I wonder if I could get Tim to sign this. And like, sure enough, I tracked him down because my merch booth was set up right next to the Night Demon Kirith Ungle stuff. So like Jarvis was hanging out, all day. And I was like, hey, if you see Tim, like, let me know. I want to get this stuff signed by him. And so I finally like tracked down Tim, and he was like, "You want me to sign this?" And I was like, "Uh, yeah, it's cool." And he was like, "Well, don't tell Michael." And I was like, "Yeah, I just had Michael Moorcock on speed dial. Like, I'm not gonna tell him anything about this." But that was a really goofy little moment. So, anyways, tangent aside, yeah, I've just been kind of going as best I can. I've got a couple cool things lined up, and then I'm starting to get more tapes released, and I've got a lot of cool things planned out for the next few months. So we'll see what happens, and then like vending as well. So like I really like going to fests and vending and working with some of the bands that are playing stuff like that. So I don't know. It's just a lot of it. I just love the people that are doing all this. So I just want to help them
Yeah.
out.
Hell yeah, dude. In the same, we're still on that subject. The Chrome 3D star that you just made for Eternal Champion.
Oh yeah,
You said you just used some retro software. I'm curious what you used.
yeah. It's Jason might annihilate me for telling you this. I won't. I'm not gonna say the name. I'll tell you the name later, just in
Okay,
case.
cool,
Just in
cool.
case there's any
Between
people out there.
us, I got you.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But it's basically I found the program that all of like the CGI '90s power metal albums used. Jason and I were trading a bunch of the like the 3D power metal albums from the '90s. Uh, we could just call them 3D power metal just because that's they're using that CGI for all the album covers, and we were really getting into this vibe, like this, just the idea of creating this but like kind of rebranding it with some new stuff. And so I found the program that most of them used back in the '90s, and it's always really funny to looking at the credits because you're like, oh, it's like one publisher that's doing all these 3D artworks for these bands, and it's like the bass player or the singer. They would just get these programs and do it. So I found that it's a slightly updated version of the retro program,
Hmm.
and I've just been using that. I opened it the very first day, and nothing made sense. I was like, "This is the craziest interface. It looks terrible. There's no way this is user friendly." And I let it sit, and I was like, "Ah, this is above my pay grade. I'm just gonna stick with manipulating other people's art." But then once again, Jason would be like, every now and again, he'd kind of like poke me in the side and be like, "Hey, I still want to do this stuff." And I was like, all right, yeah, well, I'll figure it out. And then, like, in my brain, I'm like, I'll just find someone else to do it eventually. And then he kept poking me. And I was like, all right, let me figure this out. I sat down one weekend and I figured out the interface. And the first design I did was terrible because it was just getting used to it. And then I did that 3D chaos. I did a couple other like landscape type stuff, and then 3D chaos hit, and he was like, "This is it. This is perfect." And so that really hit pretty well. And then since then, I've done like a Hillsfar shirt with the same program, a Thief shirt, and we've got some more Eternal Champion / Sword Worship stuff lined up uh, to keep that kind of going.
You're bringing it back, dude. Single handedly, you're going to bring
Yeah,
it back.
only me. No. It was just kind of funny to think about because I've gotten a lot of really good feedback on it. Because that was another thing I was worried about. I was like, is anybody going to get this? Like, it doesn't matter to me if someone else gets it necessarily. I would like for other people to get it, but if it's just us enjoying it, I like that too.
Yeah.
But like, sure enough, yeah, I started sharing a design here and there, and people were like, "Yo, what is this?" And then we did the Eternal Champion shirt, and then like the magnet that went with it, and people were pretty positive. And I've gotten some other people have reached out. I'm not gonna say any names because we'll see if they actually if it pans out. But like a band that I never expected to talk to about doing something like this with popped up, and I was like, no way, this is wild. So we'll see if that happens. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But like I said, we've got a few more like Eternal Champion and Sword Worship things lined up with some of that imagery. So I don't know if we'll take it as far as like a full album cover for Eternal Champion. I still think they need like an oil painting. They need just to have that vibe. But maybe for some other smaller releases, we'll see what happens.
All right, Mike. You know the question I like to ask everyone at the end is
Yeah.
you ever had an experience you would consider
Oh,
supernatural,
supernatural.
paranormal, etc.?
Not that I can think of, and it sucks because like I've always been interested in the supernatural. I've always been interested in like the slightly what's just out of focus, what's on the periphery. But like I've never had a one-on-one interaction. I grew up watching X-Files, and I was like, when's this going to happen to me? Like, when do I get alien abducted? This is cool stuff. And then I don't know. This just never really hit. And it's not necessarily that like it's no type of like denial where I'm like it doesn't exist, therefore it's never going to happen to me. I've always been kind of like, well, what is it? I think the closest thing we ever had, I was at Fire in the Mountains whenever Eternal Champion played, and it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden this string of lights goes across the sky, and I was like, what is this?
This is it.
Finally it's happening. And then like we're freaking out, and then someone's just like, oh, it's the Starlink. And I was like, god damn it, the Starlink. That's it, that's all this is. So that's the closest I've gotten, which is a terrible thing to come close to. Like I've even been out to Marfa, but I didn't get to see any of the Marfa lights out in Texas and stuff. So
Fuck.
yeah, so I got to go back out there at some point, hopefully catch them. But I've always wanted to experience it. Maybe that's my problem, is that I've wanted it too much, and so it just never happens. But yeah, as far as then, not very much of a conversation in that, unfortunately.
All right, Mike. Just to put a bow on this thing, what's on the horizon you want to share that you can share?
But I can share. As far as Greylord's Hoard stuff goes, I just announced the Chamber Mage tape. We're hoping to have that. Should be here in time for Hell's Heroes. They're playing Hell's Heroes, and so it'll be a nice release. I am going to be working with my buddy Tim. He does Silk and Steel patches, which is a pretty big deal. We have some really cool stuff lined up for the summertime. He got a connection that I never would have thought, and so I'll be doing more stuff with Silk and Steel. Oh, as far as the Chamber Mage patch goes, I will be vending at Hell's Heroes. I don't know when this. Well, this will come out plenty of time at Hell's Heroes. I'll be vending at Hell's Heroes, and it'll be me, Silk and Steel, and then Sword Worship as well, and probably some Postmortem Apocalypse, which is Phil from Manila Road, Phil Ross. He'll have some stuff there as well because his band Century's playing. So we'll have like a big spread. I want everyone to come say hi. I have another tape coming out. When do you think? No, I shouldn't announce that yet. I won't announce that one.
I'll probably have this up like today or tomorrow.
Okay, yeah. So I'll hold off on that one then because we got to wait to probably like March to announce. But I got a couple more tapes lined up. The next Castles and Keeps should be here at hopefully by the end of February. We'll see. I got some pretty big names lined up for that one. Got some other really cool merch coming out. I'm trying to branch out a little bit. Working with like I want to work with you. We talked about doing a patch. Like I'd love to do a patch for you guys. I talked to DMR about doing another patch. I've talked to Russia Power about doing a patch. So all that kind of stuff. I just, I want to work with my friends that are doing cool
Right.
things. Patches are a really easy thing to sell, and I just want to get, some extra names out there because it all of the imagery for all these things, DMR, you, it all matches up with anyone's battle vest. You know what I'm saying? You got a Man of War patch, you might as well have a DMR patch. You might as well
Right.
have a Triple M patch, and Rush Power, obviously, Man of War. So just working with everybody is just cool. And I just working on stuff, constantly working on things. And then I got, like I said, mentioned earlier, I got some music. Hopefully by the summertime, we'll get that wrapped up and at least released digitally. More stuff coming with Sword Worship. We didn't really talk about that too much. A lot of cool things lined up, but it's another one of those timelines. Like, what's the timeline going to look like for releasing things? I guess that's really it. That's all. I mean, saying it in the span of 2 minutes makes it sound like so minuscule, but it's so many things running through my noggin
Yeah.
with a
Yeah.
lot of. But yeah, the main thing's gonna be Venom Fests. I have a few more fests lined up throughout the year. I guess I can say it now. So Legions of Metal in Chicago, they just put their full lineup out today. And I talked to Bob, the guy who runs it, and I'm gonna bend up there in Chicago at that fest. So that'll be cool. Just like a fun way to get out,
Yeah.
hang out, see more people.
Hell
So
yeah, man.
yeah, that's about it, I guess.
There we go. Like I told Joe, it's like, dude,
Yeah.
as soon as you're done with that artwork, it's going to sell itself just because you did it.
Oh yeah.
Like putting that on a patch, it just go like it's like, hey,
Oh,
Deathmaster did this.
yeah. Like he did all those Century or no Savage Oath designs.
Yeah.
And like those are like their best selling stuff because everyone wants it. You say, oh, cool. I guess if everyone doesn't call him Joe, but he did this stuff, so like that freaks me out. This is so badass.
Right. Well, Mike, man, it's been a pleasure chatting with you.
I can talk. If you don't, if you got to cut me off, but I'll talk a little too much, especially with all this stuff.
All right, dude. I
So
appreciate you, man. And I'll
yeah, no,
probably have this up later tonight because I don't have shit else
cool.
to do the rest of the day. So fuck
Yeah, I was
it.
trying to figure out I got this plan, and I'm like, well, I guess I'll go watch a movie. I
All right, dude. Well, you have a great rest of your day, dude.
yeah, you too, man.
All right, bye bye.